Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today. Great to have you all on board. Really excited to have you join us in today's session. We'll have a dedicated question and answer time at the end and make sure that we get to all of those questions. Today I'm joined by Gail Haggerty from Netstock. Very pleased to have her here today presenting. Netstock is a very key partner for Kilimanjaro. We've seen a great complement between Netstock driving the inventory optimization requirements with MYOB XO and MYOB Advanced driving the operational execution. I'm really excited to have Gail join us and share a little bit more around demand forecasting and looking forward to learning along with all of you as well. Without any further ado, Gail, I'm going to hand over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thanks for having us today, and I look forward to letting everybody know all about Netstock with Kilimanjaro partnership. For today's agenda, we will be talking about demand forecasting, what the main disruptions to our supply chain are and have been over recent years, the importance of forecasting, the essential supply chain KPIs, and how to improve your supply chain forecasting. And then I'll take you through a quick demo of Netstock at the end and have time left for Q&A. So as Stephen said, please put any questions into the Q&A chat there. So what is demand forecasting? The objective of demand forecasting is to use predictive planning and analytics to provide an accurate estimate of the number of goods customers are likely to purchase over some time. Using this information, demand planners can estimate future sales and improve financial and capacity planning decisions. Selecting the correct method of predicting demand for your supply chain will ensure you're making the right decisions to meet demand. But demand forecasting isn't as easy as it sounds. There are lots of disruptions and external factors that can impact on your supply chain planning. Pandemic, global recessions, inflation, supply material delays, etc. But before I get into those, there's a poll on your screen. Please tell us what forecasting tools you currently use. One of the big things that we've seen on change recently is the changing or disruptions to supply chain, and the change in consumer behaviour. Consumer behaviour, buying behaviour has drastically changed since the pandemic, becoming more digital. People are more safety conscious, value driven, and environmentally conscious. As a result, demand planners need to consider the increased demand for online channels and optimise inventory levels accordingly. There's shipping challenges. I'm sure everybody who's dealt with overseas imports during the pandemic, many of your businesses would have been significantly impacted. We also now have the geopolitical tensions in the Ukraine, and there's been price spikes happening to impact on freight costs and commodities like steel and timber. These international developments have unpredictable impacts, which is where strategies like nearshoring, partnering with suppliers, manufacturers and freight companies located nearby can be a benefit. But better securing the supply of goods on time and in full is not always possible for nearshoring, but understanding your supplier network and having that visibility of how your suppliers are performing makes a huge difference. The material shortages, there's been a bullwhip effect from the shipping challenges and the pandemic. So while things are still having in short supply, like lithium used in the electronic vehicle industry, pharmaceuticals, food, we've all seen the shortages on the shelves, although I think the recent egg shortage is more about consumer behaviour rather than a supply chain problem. We all want free range eggs instead of cage eggs. And now there are gluts in some items like semiconductors. After prolonged shortages during COVID, this has now led to stockpiling of those items. So with this in mind, it's important to identify your high demand items and to not just source the right amount of materials, but understand the risk and calculate the right amount of safety stock, all while developing a good relationship with your suppliers. The next one is poor supply chain visibility. If you can't see what's happening in your supply chain, it really is going to impact on that. So leveraging technology like NetStock to gain visibility to supply chain operations, to measure inventory levels, improve fill rate, generate statistical forecasts and dynamic safety stock levels, and to monitor supplier performance. This will all increased visibility will quickly identify and address potential stockouts and excess before they become problematic and prevent you from meeting your customer demand. And of course, not investing in the right predictive supply chain technology. Spreadsheets just don't simply cut it anymore. Use technology to quickly model the different scenarios to measure the impact and profitability of these scenarios in your supply chain. So with all of these issues impacting supply chain, does forecasting still matter? Absolutely is the answer. So let's see what the poll results are. All right, so most people are using their ERP with a fair chunk of Excel, so 45% Excel and 55% ERP, and no other options for forecasting. So hopefully today's session will show you one of those alternatives. So the importance of forecasting is all about increasing customer service. We want to accurately forecast to maintain adequate stock levels, to minimise stock outs and fulfil customer orders promptly. Customers, as we know, are number one. We want to avoid excess with better stock allocation. Forecasting ensures you order the right amount of stock at the right time to prevent that excess. Improving relationships with suppliers. So we can forecast in two directions. We can, if we've got an accurate sales forecast, we can then ensure that we can provide a forecast to our suppliers to allow them to manage their stock better so that they can align their production and delivery schedules. Improve financial planning. Accurate demand forecasts facilitate effective financial planning and budgeting. We all know how the bottom line is very important, and making sure that we're achieving our modelling our forecast can help do that. And NetStock's new product, Pivot Forecasting, takes financial forecasting to another level. So I'll show you that in the demo at the end of the presentation. Reduce stockouts. Need I say more? Worse than having excess is stocking out. Effective production planning. When your finished goods forecast is accurate, your production planning becomes a breeze. And if there's any production people on the line, I know that that's not the case. And of course, risk management. If you forecast well, your forecast risk is minimised, and where you can't forecast well, NetStock will recognise this risk and build the right amount of safety stock to help mitigate this. So now we know how important demand forecasting is for our supply chain performance. What other measures should we be looking for? So we should be looking at the supply chain KPIs. KPIs are typically aligned to a business's strategic goals and objectives, and help monitor key areas such as inventory management, procurement, and customer service. With NetStock, you get full visibility to monitor and analyse your KPIs to help identify areas for improvement, make informed decisions, and optimise your demand forecasting processes to achieve better outcomes. So the 4 key supply chain KPIs that I'll be talking about today is stock holding, fill rate, stock turns, and supplier performance. Stock holding with NetStock can easily track your stock holding and monitor your progress. Your goal should be to bring your actual stock holding value as close to your model value or ideal stock value as possible when while maintaining or increasing your fill rate. Your fill rate is typically the measure of percentage of fulfilling your customer orders in full and on time. By monitoring your fill rate, you can also identify patterns of demand variability and understand how much safety stock you need available for high-risk items with volatile demand or unstable supply. NetStock customers are often able to improve or maintain already high fill rate performance while reducing excess and overall stock holding. A recent case study we did from a relatively new customer of ours, Australis Food, showed that they were able to reduce their inventory by 35% while increasing sales by 50%, and they still maintained a 97% fill rate with using net stock. Stock turns. Stock turns is calculated by measuring how many times you will sell your stock on hand value over the next 12 months. The net stock uses the 12-month figure. Inventory turnover benchmarks vary greatly from one type of company to the next, so accurate demand forecasting will play a big role in understanding what your target stock turns should be for your industry and product range. For most industries, the idle turnover ratio will be between 4 and 8, but obviously that varies significantly between industries like retail or food consumer. If we're selling to supermarkets, the turnover will be much higher. Industries with very expensive products like mining equipment or luxury goods can hold a lower turnover rate due to generally operating with a higher profit margin. In addition to understanding your stock turn ratio, you should also be asking yourself, am I pricing items correctly? Am I using the most efficient supplier? Am I restocking the most profitable items quickly? Which of course leads me to our fourth KPI, supplier performance. The net stock measures the purchase history to calculate supplier risk. We measure the average lead time versus the planned lead time, and if your supplier has delivered in full or not. And from here, we use this to help calculate a dynamic risk profile for each item, for each supplier in each location. So how can we improve supply chain forecasting? We can use qualitative techniques. We can rely on historical data and past trends to predict future demand. And that's the basis of what all statistical forecasting is to look at the history that's provided from your sales. We can then identify seasonal fluctuations, consumer preferences, and market trends that inform demand forecasts by analysing patterns and trends in previous sales data. Then we have the quantitative techniques. So involve expert opinion and market research. And when I say experts, I also mean your buying team. You as a buyer at your or planner at your company, you've got insights into the way your industry and your company operates and your customers. So use that as well. Experts also provide insights and predictions based on their industry knowledge and experience, and market research involves gathering data on consumer behaviour, economic indicators, and competitor analysis to make accurate demand forecasts. So some other techniques, scenario analysis. Using scenario analysis to forecast demand under different hypothetical scenarios, allowing planners to understand the potential impact of changes in variables such as pricing, marketing strategies, and external factors in future demand. Customer segmentation. This is actually a really key one when you do have those key major customers. So being able to forecast for those individual majors can be a huge benefit. By analysing their demand patterns, you can forecast better for those different customer groups. Tracking leading market indicators. So identifying and monitoring leading indicators that strongly correlate with demand. So for example, tracking economic indicators such as consumer confidence, employment rates, and housing market trends can provide insights into future demand patterns in the retail industry. And predictive analysis. Leveraging advanced analytical techniques and machine learning algorithms to analyse large data sets, identify patterns and correlations can help planners better predict future demand. And again, I'll take you through how NetStock can help you with that. We also want to collaborate with customers. Stay close to customers involves monitoring customer behaviour, building relationships, leveraging customer data, and involving them with the forecasting process. By integrating customer data from sales records, loyalty programs, online transactions, and other touch points for forecasting models and analysing this data, you can identify correlation, seasonality, and demand drivers that influence customer behaviour, leading to more accurate demand forecasts. The customer-centric approach enhances demand forecasting accuracy and ensures supply chain operations align with customer needs. If you improve your supplier relationships, there's so much complexity and balancing in inventory levels. With supply and demand, the more you develop good relationships with your suppliers and try stabilizing lead times, the more accurate your demand forecast will be. Suppliers also have their fair share of challenges. Regularly checking in on your suppliers gives you a better idea of what's happening in their supply chain. And with real-time information, you can make adjustments if needed. You can also help your suppliers by giving them the visibility of your forecast so they know in advance what stock you'll need so they can plan accordingly or flag any potential issues that occur. And of course, review and adjust demand forecasts. Continuous monitoring is critical for demand forecasting improvements. Regular reviewing of forecast accuracy, tracking actual demand against forecasted demand, and analysing the reasons for discrepancies can help identify areas of improvement. This feedback loop allows you to iteratively adjust and refine our forecast models and strategies. And of course, use predictive supply chain planning software. Investing in supply chain technology that utilises advanced analytics and machine learning algorithms can help improve supply chain demand forecasting. These tools analyse historical data, identify patterns, and make more accurate predictions, leading to improved forecast accuracy. And with that, I will jump into the demo and I will go into Netstock Inventory Advisor or a predictor first, and then we can move into our new module, pivot forecasting. And just excuse me, I'll turn my camera off because I'll be looking at my other screen. So this is what Netstock looks like when you log in. You have a dashboard with all of this information at your fingertip. We have our stock holding here on the top left-hand side of the panel, so we can see our progress in months or days or weeks as we want to track our items, where we started, where our inventory level started, and where we are today, and how close we are to achieving the model that we want to achieve with Netstock. You can see your top 5 inventory items, so in value on the top 5 list, and you can access the full report from either the hyperlink here at the bottom or at the top here. And this allows you to get an entire list of all of your inventory in this location. If you have multiple locations, you can then actually just switch between them very easily. So let's look at our small branch 2 for New Zealand. And we can see the inventory levels are much different, and a lot of the items here would perhaps be supplied from that central store. So back to the central store. The other KPIs that we have on here, of course, is the fill rate. So we have the fill rate here, and again, showing the progress of where you were when you started with Netstock to where you are now, and what your target is that you're trying to achieve. So this target is applied via using a Pareto matrix in our classification. I'll just jump in here very quickly so that you can see what that looks like. So we split all of our items into A, B, C, and high, medium, and low. And that's our stocked items. We obviously have non-stocked or indent items and obsolete items, which you would never purchase again, but you can continue to sell. And the non-stocked ones are ones that you would just order in or make on demand to fulfill a customer order. And then we have our matrix with just so much information here about the types of products that we have and the balance of our inventory. So we have a huge number of items in this C-low category, which is the bottom 4% of our inventory turnover and value. So when we're looking at rebalancing and focusing on the right items, we really want to make sure that we've got these top green columns here, the A highs, the A mediums, and the B highs. We want to make sure that these are our focus And NetStock with this classification allows you to filter and review on those items all the time, so that we can work on exception management and be focused on those key products. So with the fill rate here, again, we can drill into this report. We can see which items have been out of stock the most over the last 30 days and which ones are having the biggest impact on this. So we can see the top 5 here are all our AH items. They're the most important items for the business, making up 80% of our turnover and value. And these are the ones that we would want to action first to make sure that we can get those back in stock consistently, so that we're achieving our target of 96.8% fill rate. Then we have stock turns. So keeping all down the left-hand side of the dashboard panel, we can see here we started off at turns of 3 and went to 3.5. And that's hopefully we can continue that upward trend to improve the fill rate based on the type of industry, the stock turns based on the type of industry that we have. And the final piece in KPI is our supplier performance. So if I jump into an item here instead, we've got a part number here with all of this information. So this is our inquiry screen. So you can see there's a lot of information at your fingertips in NetStock. And we can see the supplier for this particular item here. And if we jump down to the bottom of the panel, right here we see our forecasting and sales history panel. But if we jump into the supplier performance pane, we can see the historical purchase order transactions that were recorded from this supplier for this product at this location. So this is location specific, and we're just looking at an individual item at the moment. So we can see here that we've had some early deliveries, but we've also had a lot of late deliveries. And on average, our lead time is 55 days compared to our planned lead time of 45. So we expect to get deliveries in 45 days from the supplier, but on average, they're delivering 10 days late. We've also had one short supply as well, but generally they are supplying us in full, which is great. We can get into a table here to see all of the details of every single order that we've had for that supplier over a period of time. And we can limit that. We all know that supply lead times blew out crazy with the pandemic, and we can now limit that rather than looking at that corrupted data that is probably no longer relevant. We can change the amount of data that we use to calculate this risk profile. So what this does is it creates these offset days and this supply risk percentage. And we use that as one of our 5 factors to determine what our safety stock should be. And this is dynamically recalculated every day in NetStock. So if as our supplier performance improves and as our forecast performance improves, we will decrease the amount of safety stock that we need to hold. The target fill rate obviously has a big impact on that. So if we see here, if we were to just drop our target fill rate to 95%, we would need to hold to 2 days less stock in safety stock. And this is an exponential. So if people are saying, oh, I need to hold 100% safety stock or fill rate needs to be 100%, it does become a big burden on the amount of stock that you carry. So finding that balance that's going to satisfy your customers and keep the finance team right is all what happens as part of your onboarding process with NetStock. We take you through all of that and we make sure that we set these parameters to suit your business requirements. From here, we can then also get into the actual performance from the supplier as a whole. So we can drill into this panel here. We can also do this from the supplier tab on the left-hand side if you just wanted to go and review all of your suppliers. But this has now taken us to this particular supplier, and we can see at just this, they only supply into the one location. They supply 13 products. We're holding $1.1 million worth of their inventory. And we have the safety stock value here. That's the amount of safety stock that we're holding for all of those products. We've got our averages here on the number of days and the risk and the offset days as well. Then we've also got information about the historical deliveries, anything that's overdue, open purchase orders that are currently in the system, and my favorite, the future forecast. So we've got panels for each one of those, but I'm just going to jump into the future one for now so that we can see what our 12-month plan is on how much we plan to order from this supplier to meet our forecasted demand in NetStock. There's a table here where we can actually download this into a report, and then we would be able to send that report to our supplier as our 12-month projection or forecast for what we plan to order from that supplier. So all of these reports in NetStock are available to download into CSV just by clicking on the icon here. But this is a relatively short one. There's only 13 products supplied from this supplier, and we can see the recommended quantities to order from each product for the next 12 months, which is, I think, a huge asset for building supplier relationships. Something we've also introduced recently in NetStock is the exec dashboard. So when we were looking at an individual location here for the stock holdings, stock turns, fill rate performance, in the exec dashboard, we can actually see the whole business. So this was released just earlier this year. And then wait for the summary to load. Sorry, there's a lot of data to pull through here, so it can take a little while to load up. But here we can see the total view for this company. So there's several locations in this company. And this now gives us a true representation of the total amount of excess that we have across all of those locations. The excess percentage, the surplus orders, if we're stocked out. We also have fill rate. So fill rates, capturing and saving this at the all locations level is relatively new. We only introduced that with this exec dashboard. So when we're selecting all locations, it takes a little while to accumulate all of the snapshots and the historical data because we didn't have that history. But if I switch this to a single location, we can see the fill rate and how what we were targeting. We were targeting a lot. It's taken a while, but we are making really big improvements on getting to our achieved fill rate here. There is so much information here in the executive dashboard, and we have separate panels for inventory, sales, recommended orders, and orders there available to client admin users in NetStock. And if you would like more information on this, I would recommend that we book a demo with NetStock. Another key feature that was released around about the same time is our opportunity engine. So if we're talking about AI and machine learning, this is NetStock's opportunity engine, which will give you recommendations on how you can, or notifications really, of how you can improve your inventory. So it looks at all of the information that's in NetStock and decides which items are having the biggest financial impact on your business, and then gives recommendations on how you could perhaps improve this. You can see here we've got a product in the small branch number 3, which will run out of stock. And small branch number 3 must be a location that has a different currency. I'm not recognizing that. But you can set different currencies by location. I might just jump in there to explain how that works. So you can see the little flags here. So small branch 3, again, not recognizing that flag, but it's a currency that I'm not familiar with. If you're not interested in that kind of that particular location, not one you care for, you can permanently mute it so it won't show up recommendations for that branch. If this is information that you're not really interested in, it's not part of your job description, you can also give it a thumbs down so that the system will learn what your individual preferences are and what it shows you with these. You can see that the Brexit UK warehouse has already been muted for this user, and these are specific to your login. So it will learn how you want to use NetStock. So here's another one where we've found that there's a PO for a supplier in the central store that's overdue by 59 days. We're expecting 67,000 units to come in, a value of nearly $1 million. If this is an error, fix it, or if it is actually 59 days overdue, probably a good thing to follow up with your supplier. So you can keep clicking through these and it will remember your preferences and give you more opportunities to optimize your inventory with really quick wins that are going to have the biggest financial impact on your business. So while we're looking at that, I'm quickly going to log into Pivot Forecasting. So this is all of the, I guess, the KPIs, the reporting that we can do in NetStock. And we also launched this year Pivot Forecasting, which is, and let me just bring this across to the right screen once I log in. Okay, so Pivot Forecasting was launched. It's our new advanced forecasting module. It integrates our original NetStock Predictor app with our Predictor Plus integrated business planning suite. And it looks at the sales transactions. So, sorry, let me jump back to here. I'll just drill into an individual item here so that you can see the product that is correlated, how the information runs through between the two. So let's jump into this potential stock out item here, sitting in the dashboard in the central store, 25001. And we can see all of the sales history that we have here and the forecast that's been generated. It's actually two demand streams here. There's a distribution demand and forecast. But what we'll just be looking at is the actual sales history and the direct sales forecast for this item. And if I jump into the sales for, based on this being August 2022, July's sales last month, we can get right into the details of the transactions that made up that total of 3,463 sales. There were some returns in there. There was 143 different customers. And if we were wanting to forecast by customer group, I wouldn't recommend that we look at all of those customers. We would just pick the major ones, your really key ones, the ones that probably make up the top 80% of your sales volume, so that you can just focus on, again, that top 80%. If I jump into this list here, we can see all of the individual transactions again and the individual customer codes. So one of our major customers here is the show 001. I'll call it shop 001 just to make my life easier. And we can see that there's been quite a few transactions in a single month for that supplier with quite large volumes. Sorry, that customer with quite large volumes. So from here, let's jump into that model in Pivot. So this is our model that we have. And I've got some hierarchy set up here already pre-planned. So let me apply that. So I really am only interested in looking at my stocked items. And then I want to, in this instance, the location is my central store. I've got the customer grouping there so that I can then choose that customer. So this is my shop 001. And then we also have another grouping here. So this can be any number of groups that you want to bring in. Categories, it could be your buyer information, the person who does your planning, could be your account managers so that you can get your sales reps to give their forecast and update information in here. So let's just jump to open it up to the individual items. So now we are on the base node, what we call the node here. And in the hierarchy, we can see that item. So this is our individual product for that customer at this location. So we can see here the sales history on the black line. We can see the historical forecast, so the fitted forecast of what we had been forecast, what the computer generated forecast was. And then we have our future forecast, which has just come up with this flat line forecast here. But let me just show you how it correlates back to main NetStock app. If we were to add up all of these sales to this one customer, I did the maths earlier, and those numbers there add up to 640 for July 2022. And that's what we see here in this cell in the actual history, here on the demand history sheet. So we've got a bunch of different dashboards that we can that are come default with Pivot as well, but you can configure your own dashboards as well, so that you can put all of the right charts and information that you want to use to slice and dice the information that you need to based on your requirements for your business. So you can see here in the demand future sheet, we've got a calculated forecast, the ability to put in promotions. So if we knew that there was a sale coming up, if we wanted to adjust the forecast, and then that turns into our synchronized forecast, which then we can finalize. Once we've finished reviewing and setting it all up, we can finalize that forecast, and that gets imported back into the app here and replaces the originally computer generated forecast in NetStock with your refined forecast based on all of your inputs from business knowledge, from all of your, you may get a forecast from your major customers. You can also put that in here, any promotional information. So to show a little bit more of that, I will jump into a different model very quickly. I'm conscious of the time. I'll wrap up in a couple of minutes to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. So we now have a region, a channel. So this could be your customer grouping or channel. We have an item category, and we've got our sales rep, account manager there. So let's look at our East DIY big box as the customer or the channel, the sales channel, and our backyard barbecues. And then under here, we then have Jane as, let's choose Jane as our account manager. This is our forecast performance dashboard that we're seeing here. And you can see there's been a big change in the final forecast. So Jane's obviously aware of some market information that she thinks that there's going to be quite a peak in sales here. I think this is US based, and we're talking about barbecues. So this will be coming into summer, probably spring when the weather starts to fine up. And everybody's planning to get their new barbecues ready for the summer months ahead. One of the really key features here is this data pivot map, which highlights the exceptions, so we can see that the final forecast versus the actual history and the percentage difference. There are a whole bunch of statistical forecast analysis available here, WMAP, the percentage deviation, the forecast deviation, so that we can do all the analysis that we need to do here. We also have the ability to have that finance dashboard, which gives us the ability to adjust forecasts by price, or at least change our sell price and our cost price in all of these panels here, and see what that impact will have over time. And we can see here the split of the items that's in our pie chart here for the products that Jane's responsible for forecasting, and which items are the most important based on their revenue. A lot of this is very configurable. You can probably see there's a lot of information here in Pivot forecasting, and it really is here for you to take your forecasting to the next level, and really get in and spend the time you need to accurately forecast your products, to ensure that you're getting the right information. One last dashboard to show is the forecast management one. And what I'll do here is actually show that you can change the statistical forecast. It's the system itself has picked expert as the forecast, but we want to actually say, well, we've manually put this override in to say that it's seasonal, but why not just make it seasonal? So if we do that on the fly, it will detect a seasonal trend, and it has now applied it. You've kind of lost the line, unfortunately, because the calculated forecast is now actually matching the final forecast there. But you can see the changes that get applied. And you can also increase or decrease with level trend, dampening, making all kinds of different adjustments here. So there's a fair amount to learn. So I think with a few minutes spare, we can get into the questions.
Fantastic, Gail. It was a good session. Thank you very much. Let's just put out the call for last questions. Please don't hesitate to use that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom interface to ask any questions that you may have. Now, I've got a few here for you, Gail. If you're ready, let's kick into it. First one here, can you measure forecast accuracy in NetStock's pivot forecasting?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to jump back into that screen?
Yeah, look, I think that'd be great just to kind of get into a little bit of that detail if we can. We've got the time.
Okay, fabulous. All right, so let's jump into the forecast performance panel. And this is where we can see that percentage deviation, the forecast deviation, and we can really analyze all of this based on how well we've been performing. And again, that fitted forecast is what was calculated previously versus the actual sales. So in this model here, we're actually, I think, doing a pretty good job. The variations aren't very big, but also this heat map down here gives us a really nice view of and being able to drill into the individual items. So obviously the size of the square indicates the portion of the product sales, and the blue and the red are the forecast variances of a negative or a positive impact. So here we're 112% variance, and this one was a minus 64%. So we can visually see it, but then you can also download all of these little panels into Excel to do further analysis as well.
Now, you've just happened to come upon the next question that I have for you, Gail. Almost. Can we customize the dashboards, and can we export the information if we need more detail?
Absolutely. So each panel or each table panel like this, you can export into Excel, and you can in fact change the dashboard for what you want to see. So I've got this little Gail's dashboard. I'm not sure, and I've just configured it to have all of the pretty colors on there that I like to see. So you can make these for provided you've got the right access. And then tailor the way you want to operate. And that's the big thing about pivot, and that's why it's called pivot forecasting, because it really does allow you to show and model everything in the right structure that you want to see.
That's great. Now, just moving on from that first question that we delved into, got a further question here from Peter. Are the green AH, 8M, etc. items calculated, or are they selected manually? So you might just want to jump back to that.
Yes, so I'll go to classification here. These are calculated automatically based on the policy defaults here. The policy classification. So we can adjust the percentage that we use to calculate them, but the ABC is based on the forecast. And I do recommend using forecast rather than sales history, because the forecast is so important, and you can tailor that to suit your business knowledge and the market trends. And for new items, I would highly recommend always using the forecast to do this calculation. It's then weighted by either the cost price, selling price, or margin. Obviously, selling price in Inventory Advisor in NetStock here is at the item location level. There is selling price available at the transaction and customer level in Pivot, but I would recommend probably using cost price, as it's the most stable costing method as well. And then you can change the forecast. And look, I see somebody has actually changed this from the default. So we're actually making 88% and 90% here, the AH items. So by default, this is set to 80%. So therefore, your B items would be 16%, and your C items would be 4%. So this one, someone has been having a play in this demo. And we can see they've also changed the high, medium, and low, which purely uses the forecast. So this is just the velocity of the item, and it is calculated automatically.
Fantastic. All right, moving on to another question here. How are manufactured items consumed via production orders calculated in net stock?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways of managing production items and production in net stock. Good thing I'm in the right demo instance. So if I jump back to the dashboard here, this central store is actually our main manufacturing location in this demo. And so we're actually manufacturing most of these products with a bill of material. So we can read bills of materials in from your ERP. This is a raw material being used in all of these finished goods. We could have also levels of manufacturing, so you have sub-assemblies in between. And we pull this information in from your ERP. There is also the option of if you kit or you make kind of packs, we can just read the consumption from that transaction in your ERP as well. And then you wouldn't see this BOM structure, and it would just look like sales history on the consumption of those components that are used for your kitting.
Yeah. Maybe just to expand upon that, depending upon how you're managing your work orders within your ERP system, if you are backflushing material on those work orders, of course, the material consumption, the raw material consumption will be captured within the ERP system, which will then flow into net stock for raw material usage in terms of analysing demand. If you're not backflushing, if you're actually issuing materials in a similar way, the actual material issues will be captured. So there are some options there around how you manage actual usage and potentially variances on that expected usage as well. We won't go into any more detail around that one, I think, today, Gail. We might just leave that one there.
For sure.
Now, I did just have one more here. And again, let's make this last call for questions. How many months of average month of sales does net stock calculate against?
Sorry, say that one again for me. How many months of
average sales does net stock calculate against?
Okay, so that would be, I guess, to work out what the forecast would be. Yes, correct. Okay. Yeah. So we use all of the history, but it's weighted depending on the configuration settings that we set up in NetStock. So again, that's part of our onboarding process that we do with NetStock. Obviously, I'm passionate about that. I've been with NetStock doing that for 8 years now. And it's my key role to make sure that we onboard all of our customers correctly, and we make sure that we get the configuration right to ensure that we weight the amount of periods that we use. So you can have it reactive where you're using like the last 3 months. You can have it a medium reactivity where it will look more at the last 12 months. But we do use all of the history that we have available imported. And that's normally capped at 5 years. On an initial data import, we bring in 3 years worth of history if it's available, because that helps us to detect good seasonal trends and profiles.
Fantastic. Just expanding upon that, and the question hasn't specifically been asked, but I know one of those questions that often comes up is what happens with new products, or what happens when we have super sessions? How do we model that historical forecast? Should we just talk about lookalikes and a few of those things, Gail?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure that I've got an example of a super session in this. Let's try this one here. No.
What, putting you on the spot?
I know, that's all right. I just need to make sure I've got the right demo open to find a super session. And let me hope that I have an updated demo instance. So we've got the ability to see super sessions in the filters. So if you are looking for items that are superseded, we can do that. So items in a super session, let's see what I've got here. Bingo, got one. So let's have a look at this item
and
here.
You didn't prepare this one earlier.
I know. So we've got this option here, and this is linking these two items together. And we can see there's a superseded tab here now available, and we can see the ratio. It's a 1-to-1 ratio here with these two items. This is the old item and this is the new one. And we want to take all of the history, and we can potentially take all of the stock on hand and any open orders as well. But again, that's configurable to what suits your business requirements. And if I toggle this on and off, you can see that almost all of the sales disappeared. We've only got sales from July and then a couple now in August. And that's because the rest of the history actually belongs to the other item. And I can see that other item here, where I was before. So let's open this one up. This is the old product. This has now been made non-stocked. You can choose to make it obsolete, so you would never reorder this one if you want to. It is still showing stock on hand, so we have chosen not to push that stock. So it's not a direct replacement, but it's a like item in this circumstance. And again, we can see that there's no forecast for this because we're not planning on really reordering and continuing to sell this item.
Yep.
But we can toggle on to see what that history was like. This information gets brought through into Pivot as well. So you will see adjusted history to where you see the combination of the superseded history being brought across onto the new item. So you still get that visibility in Pivot as well.
Fantastic.
So next steps. Did you want to go through that, Stephen, or shall I?
More than happy to, Gail.
Okay.
So look, firstly, again, just thank you all for your attendance. Really do appreciate it. If you do want to look further at NetStock and take those next steps in terms of evaluating that for your organization, please just do reach out to your account manager at Kilimanjaro. If you don't have those details by name, you can just use the samacs at kilimanjaro-consulting.com email address. And of course, there is a little bit of a promotional offer there. Gail, did you just want to talk to that for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. If you book a demo with NetStock before the 31st of October, so you've got about 3 weeks time to book that in, we will offer a 30% discount on the implementation fee if you agree to sign up with NetStock, if it's the right solution for you. So I think it's a really good deal. I personally get very upset when we discount onboarding because I think it's such a critical piece of the puzzle, but we are more than happy to do that for our loyal Kilimanjaro customers.
Fantastic. And of course, just a quick tip for all of you out there, if you do proceed with onboarding with NetStock, just make sure you put your hand up and ask for Gail, because she's an absolute whiz. I might get you in trouble there, Gail, so we'll leave that one alone.
My boss won't be happy with that.
All right. Well, look, thank you so much, Gail. I really do appreciate it. Some fantastic content there, and great to see some of the new features within NetStock. Thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you for coming and joining us today. Really do appreciate it. And of course, please do reach out to your account manager to discuss some opportunities to improve the optimization of your inventory. Thank you all.